Hi, HR Nation, and welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Super excited about today's episode. We're joined by Michael Forbes, Senior Director of Skills and Workforce Development at Boeing. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I'm doing well. Good to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
That's good to see you again. It's been a while, right? Since we last
Yeah,
spoke. I think like a couple of
yeah, it has
months.
been a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How's the family? How's everything?
doing well. Yeah, with everything that's going on in the world, we're lucky. There's a lot happening, of course, but the family's doing great. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Even more reason to have an attitude of gratitude, right? Every day.
Oh yeah, yeah. With everything you see happening around the world, it is. Yeah, you have a lot of gratitude for what you have and keeping it together, keeping things going, and being able to help people at work, that are going through tough times.
Yeah. Tell everyone a little bit more about your background, Michael, sort of your journey to where we are now.
Yeah, well, just real briefly, I finished a PhD and I started working at Intel Corporation. So ended up running Intel University for a number of years. I was there for about 14 years. Great place. Got to work with our CEO back in the day, Andy Grove, and we led all training globally for Intel, and it was all leadership and management development. We did the strategic planning with the executive staff, all the manufacturing training, sales and marketing, chip design teams. So that was a good proving ground. And then I left, got recruited to Microsoft. So I was there 14 years. And that was really a move out of HR and out of learning and development to go into the business. I really wanted the business acumen piece. And it was a play off the strategic planning I had done at Intel. And so it was a chance to really go deeper into the business. And so I led a business strategy team at Microsoft and ended up working on a lot of product teams for different products, and finally helping to manage and leading a team of digital transformation consultants who are going out to customers and helping them digitally transform for the future. Talking about the future of work,
Yeah.
How it's all changing. And then got recruited to Boeing, I think, because of the combination of the learning and HR background with the business and digital transformation background. And now we're looking to transform Boeing. That's, and Boeing's changing its culture. We're looking at changing the leaders and roles, but also infusing a lot of new technologies to change the company for the future. How we engineer planes, how we manufacture planes, that kind of thing.
Love that. What drew you back to this side of the fence?
Well, I'll say I left thinking that there were some really traditional approaches to HR and learning and development that could be frustrating. A lot of places are kind of stuck in this mode of open enrollment courses and more courses are better, and find a need, create a course, and then throw it on the pile and maintain it. And really wanted to be more strategic. When I was at Microsoft, I really wanted to work with HR to come alongside me and figure out how to more surgically develop my people for the future, and came up with a methodology around workforce development to do that. And so that's really what I'm doing at Boeing now. I wanted to do it the right way, do it more surgically and laser focused on the future, and tie it more to business strategy. And so that's really why I came back.
Love that. So it kind of gives you an opportunity, right, to take all of those things you learned from the last 30 years in those two companies almost. It's if my maths are right, close to that number, right, and build that. So it's super exciting opportunity.
Yeah, it all kind of played forward, and it's like, okay, if I'm a P&L leader, I really want to focus on my strategy. I have a few levers. I have finances, I have my products and services, I have my people. Who can come alongside me and really help me develop the people so I can achieve my strategy. That's really what it was about.
Yeah. What would you say the biggest things that you learned, if you had to say, top 3 things you learned from working in the business that have helped you succeed and that's transferred over into this role?
Yeah, I think really thinking like a business leader about their strategy and how the people play such an important part in it. So that's number one. It's really that business acumen around how the people are so crucial to achieving business outcomes. I also think that technology has accelerated and continues to. And so I want HR people to know that the fourth industrial revolution is really happening. At Microsoft, we always thought if you could get the operating system in the cloud, all kinds of amazing things would happen. and it's happening today. The cloud is driving new technologies more than ever, and it's everything from Internet of Things and AI and machine learning to quantum computing, and that is changing the way we work. It's tools and processes that come as enterprise applications, but it will change the way we work, and it'll help businesses, the leaders, achieve their outcomes. So that's probably the second thing. And the third thing, I think, is being really data driven. I think we need to find a way to help with digital literacy and help HR people see that we can measure and be data driven and tie that to the business outcomes.
Definitely, yeah. It's so many leaders I speak to, and when you kind of trace back the success of the CHROs that come on the show, many of them have spent many years outside of HR. And they always, if I ask them what are the key things, levers of your success, they always point to that. That time they worked in supply chain or sales or operations, they I always find that common thread throughout all of the episodes we've done on this show.
Yeah.
And many times they're like, if you haven't done that, make sure you do. Get outside the business and experience that.
I think it's really valuable. Yeah, it gives a whole different perspective, coming back to HR.
I think there's like one thing, understanding how your company makes money when you talk about, but there's a difference in actually living and breathing it and working.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I think seeing the business strategy get created and come to life and executed, and learning about the products and the business plans needed, that you need to wrap around products and services, how companies innovate, and then how HR can support that. All of it's really important.
Yeah. And also like that relationship piece, right? Because when you're having to build those relationships and with different functions, leaders throughout the organization in a different way you would perhaps that you all traditionally would in HR, and understanding what are the motivators for each of those things. So when you sit back in that HR seat, you've got a different set of lenses on almost.
So true. Yeah, you can really empathize with the leaders and put yourself in their shoes and see what they're experiencing. And I think that's so important from a relationship perspective, because you become that trusted advisor in supporting them. Definitely.
Yeah. How do you say, you talk about the fourth industrial revolution, we've heard that a lot, but I feel like definitely over the last 2-3 years, it's kind of, come to the forefront and we're seeing it, we're living it, Firstly, how would you describe that for someone that don't really understand what the fourth industrial revolution is? And then secondly, what impact do you think that's going to have on organizations and HR over in the next coming years?
Sure. I think it's a really important point. Yeah, I like to describe it as, the first revolution was way back in, if you think about, London and Dickens' time, the kind of steam and power of the Industrial Revolution, the first one. Second one, more assembly line, Henry Ford, electricity coming to life in use in business. And then the third, which I think most people still think we're in, is more the personal computing part of the revolution, where everyone has a computer. IT organizations have servers in the basement kind of thing, but it's really different than that. The servers aren't in the basement anymore. Everything's in the cloud. And as soon as everything went to the cloud with Amazon and Microsoft, it allows not just putting Word and PowerPoint and Excel in the cloud. It is quantum computing coming that will change everything. It is things that we can do around Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, machine learning. All these things are changing every 3 months and accelerating. And so and it didn't matter there was a pandemic, the technology continued to accelerate. So we have to be able to keep up with that, retrain and upskill our people who are working, because their way of working is completely changing. We're doing cloud-based, model-based engineering of digital twins, meaning we're building a plane in the cloud where everyone can collaborate, all the engineers, and test it before ever building a prototype.
Whereas before you'd literally have to build the prototype and then figure it out and then see if it works, basically. Yeah. It was
all like paper and pencil engineering, and people would submit their drawings. And now it's everyone collaborating in a cloud-based environment. We could test all the aspects of the plane in the cloud before we ever build a physical prototype.
And I'm assuming because you have like the weight, the dimensions, you could probably even test the aerodynamics in the cloud.
Yes. Yeah. That's the idea.
And run the simulations.
Yeah, the idea is to have this digital thread, so we have data to know if it's working all the way through from design, development into manufacturing, and even out to the customer for support and maintenance.
Wow. It's pretty crazy, man, when you think, when you think about it that way. It's, and especially now with such a distributed workforce where we've got people all over the world, that how do we create tools and ways that they can collaborate in that way, right? Without physically being all in the same manufacturing facility, you know?
Yeah. And where I work, Boeing, it is expanding globally. We're hiring a lot in India and Brazil. The U.S. still continues to grow, but also outside the U.S., a lot of big presence in the UK, Australia, and other parts of the world are expanding.
Definitely. How do you see that this play out in your role, see as skills workforce development? Is this going to be something you're looking to build out a new workforce development skills system that can sort of replace the traditional corporate versions that we already have?
Yeah, that's really what we've done is we've stopped being, well, we still have open enrollment courses, but I like to say, well, yes, people go to open enrollment courses and we don't really know who comes. And then when they go back, we're not sure they're really applying anything, but we still have to have some level of those. Most of that changed during the pandemic to be more online or virtual rather than in person. But what we're doing along with that, and maybe giving more emphasis, is going out to the leaders of all of our business units and functions, sitting with them to understand their business strategy, and then developing a workforce development plan that looks at all the different levels of roles in their organization and sees who's pivotal really for their business strategy. We want everyone to have good career development, but then we want to hone in on the pivotal roles and teams that can make the biggest difference. And then we have a way of actually developing and upskilling those teams and people. And at the same time, we're looking at the enterprise and reshaping the culture of Boeing as well, with enterprise skills that are very fourth industrial revolution oriented, like agile, those kinds of skills, or digital literacy. So working on it at different levels, but being more surgical and laser focused as a system.
Mm-hmm. What's the, maybe you're already doing this already, but what's the longer term vision? Is it, can people go and update their own credentials and sort of their digital credentials? So as an organization, you can constantly, for example, I was in my last company for 10 years and they had my original, first CV. I definitely wasn't the same person 10 years later. And I had about 10 different roles and a lot of his skills, but the company, no, that wasn't accessible to the whole business. Right.
Yeah. We're hoping, what we're driving toward is having more of a, positive profile of people that shows the languages they speak, the degrees they have, certificates, the courses they've taken, so that we know what we have for workforce capacity planning. And then that's all digitized. And we're also doing a lot more credentialing, so digital credentials, so people can add that to their profile.
They can do it themselves. Okay.
Yeah. And we have ways that they can achieve that. And then we also have a methodology where they self-rate their skills purely for development, and they can have one-on-ones with their manager to understand where they are against the skills needed for the future of their role. And pathways for them to grow their role and career. But then one thing we're excited about is being able to aggregate that data, take the names out and see what we have, in the workforce, see where we have by role. So say it's a systems engineer, and we can show that data to a leader and say, hey, where should we go upskill this role? You have your business strategy. Here's what you have in terms of skills. Where do we want to upskill? So it's this balance of knowing who we have, their skill set and their profile, helping them develop their role and career, and then also being able to aggregate data and go after more surgical upskilling for the business.
Yeah. What I love about this the most is like the idea that you're looking at skills and not job titles and functions, right? And that's something that was a big conversation we had recently in one of our workshops. It's because even in my previous role, I was a sales director, but I was, when I went to the team and said, I really want to go and work in the product team for a few years because I was fascinated about building the products. They're like, yeah, but you're a salesperson, right? And they didn't look at what are the leadership skills that Chris has acquired, what are all of the hard and soft skills that I developed. It was just defined, right? Just defined by this job title, which ultimately led me to quit and started this company because I felt like I hit the limit. Like above me was my the COO and CEO. That was in my sort of vertical, as it were. I was like,
yeah,
well, if I can't go left, I can't go right, and I can't go up, then I'm going out. So
that's a great case study. Yeah, I think that's what people experience. And you had skills that were transferable to another area. You had the passion and desire to want to go learn it. Let's give people stretch assignments and have people move over and try these different roles. And I think that's all about career development, but it's good for the business as well.
Yeah, it's a big shift though, right? Because I remember even like my leader, they didn't want me to leave either, right? Because we want to hold on to our talent in our team. So it's a massive cultural shift, probably more so than actually the technical. You can create these talent marketplaces, you can create, these things, but at the end of the day, it's all a cultural shift. If you don't have that part right, then it doesn't matter really.
Well, the way you were describing it, it does create silos and territoriality. And what we need are people who can move across the organization where the business needs them most, redeployment and people going into new pivotal areas and learning new skills. You mentioned skills. I think that is the currency now. It's skills and skills proficiency more so than, where you are and what role you're in. And even degrees, get outdated. And so we're looking at more, hey, are you staying fresh in the role? Are you staying upskilled? And for new people coming in, we're looking at non-degree folks even, in some key areas where we have an apprenticeship program that's bringing in cybersecurity folks from very diverse backgrounds that have aptitude and getting them some job-ready hands-on training to come in. And so it's, the world of work is shifting quite a bit in a good way, I think.
It's so exciting though. As someone who doesn't have a degree and you kind of just learned everything from the internet that we all have access to, it's like I've always just seen it as such a good superpower. Like, I'd say resilience more so because it's the resilience to be bad at something and continue learning. So I don't say learning is my superpower. I say resilience is our superpower because when you start at something and you're not great at it, it's the resilience to keep going and persevere. And as you get better, then you start getting the dopamine hits and you start to feel good about yourself because you can see the progress. But at the very beginning, where most people give up, it is that resilience to be able to do that.
Persistence and resilience. And if you don't have a degree, you're hungry to prove yourself. And if people come in and have a degree and think they can rest on laurels, I think the company should push them to perform and say, no, it's okay. You have a degree, you got to perform. And if you don't have a degree, let's see what you got. And there are lots of great talent out there that have degrees and don't have degrees. You just got to step up and perform. Yeah. But the people who don't have degrees, I think there are some really great roles, where they can, we call them bridge roles, where they can come in and have some instant impact in a new area that's expanding, like cybersecurity, if they show aptitude, and that they can then accelerate into higher levels quickly because there's such a need for that type of new role in the organization.
100%. I think, unfortunately, most people don't see it that way, but I realized when I walked into the first business I worked in that it didn't matter. Like if you had a degree or you didn't, because we all had the same training. We all had the same, I had a phone, they had a phone, I had a computer, they had a computer. There was literally no, yes, but you have some letters behind your name and you have a degree, but it doesn't mean nothing. And it was one of those eye-opening moments for me. I was like, we have the same targets, we have the same job title. Like it doesn't mean anything. But for so long, I always kind of hung it over my own head as sort of an insecurity. And I was like, this is cool. Like we're on the equal playing field. It's the same experience, and people listening to the show have heard this before. When I was like young, growing up pretty poor, is whenever I went to play a sport, it didn't matter if you were a rich kid, you had a rich family, and or whether we were poor. When we stepped onto the ice, or we stepped onto the basketball court, we're equal. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Your money's not going to help you right now, or your degree. It's not going to. No,
I love those situations. And the business world is like that, right? You step up and prove yourself. And that's one of the things that impressed me about you and your background when we talked last time was, the persistence you showed in your career, and look where it got you today. I think it's a fantastic success story.
It comes from a tough place, obviously, because at the end of the day, if I'm being completely honest, the main reason in the beginning was I have to make money because we can't eat. So when I got into a sales role, it wasn't like I couldn't do deals. Like I had to close a deal. Like I had to. Like there wasn't a choice. There was
high motivation.
My first sales job was commission only, no salary. So basically, and that was my first ever taste of work, no salary. People were like zero. So if I went out there and it was standing in a train station trying to stop people on their way home and to and from work and trying to sell them insurance with a roller banner and like a little pop-up desk thing. That's the tough job, because I've been out there for 8 hours and go home and made no money, right? Some days. It's crazy.
But you were ambitious and hungry, and that showed, and it was a level playing field. I remember when I first started at Intel, coming out with a degree, I didn't know what to expect. And they basically said, set the degree aside, doesn't matter, but we want to see what you got under the hood. Let's see how you perform. And I was like, okay, let's do this. You got to step up, and the degree, doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It opens doors and may give you some
100%.
expertise. Certainly, we want some advanced degree people
technical,
to focus on safety and quality and technical degrees for sure. But there's plenty of room for non-degree folks as well.
Oh, 100%. There's definitely a place for it as well. It's just like, don't spend, $50,000 to $100,000 on doing, business studies, or maybe take that $200K and start a business and learn how to do it whilst building it. Right. Or I had a few members of my previous company's team that did like leisure and tourism just so they could go and work in the events industry. And I was like, dude, you just spent like $50K and you could have just worked here for 3 years for free like I did and learn it all. I know you don't know what you don't know, right? At the time, but obviously if you're going to be a doctor, then you probably should go to university and learn how to do those things, right? Even one of the things I'm looking to invest in at the moment is like sort of coding academies, kind of like a franchise, to really focus on those STEM, and those that getting really kind of ingrained in my daughter and help out as much as I can with the people that don't have access to that skill, those skills, right, at a very young age in poor communities, because that's a luxury as well, right? Like, it's all good, well and good that you can afford to send your child or your son or daughter to have private coding classes and all the engineering and something, but most people can't do that.
No,
it's not possible.
Those academies are really important. We're looking at a next apprenticeship around software coding, software engineering, and looking to bring people from diverse backgrounds that could go through more of a nonprofit coding school, like you mentioned, and see how they would do an apprenticeship program to get more knowledgeable in our industry and then get more job ready, to grow the pipeline, just like you mentioned. What
obviously you're working on so many cool projects, but what would you say, if I had to ask you the question of what you're most excited about over the next 6 to 12 months, what comes to mind?
Well, we're working on a couple of projects that are really interesting with the different functions or business units that are transforming in a big way. Our IT organization is really going through a big product lifecycle transformation, but I'd say in engineering, there's this project called Development Excellence, and it's really creating a new process flow for how we design, develop, manufacture planes of the future. And we have the commercial group and the defense and space group very bought into this, but it's like what we talked about earlier. It's really getting to that model-based engineering in the cloud and pulling together all the different pieces of initiatives we've been working on, including roles, pivotal roles and teams. It's agile, it's these engineering design practices, it's that digital thread that I mentioned. And I like that level of complexity of being able to help pull it all together, create that process flow, and then have teams, cohorts go through that and learn the new way of developing planes.
Which is where you and the team come in, really, to build that process of way of learning. It's so interesting. Are you using VR in that at all, just out of curiosity?
We're looking at VR and also simulations where teams make decisions and they see the consequences of their decisions downstream, where they're up front making engineering decisions. And do you understand the ramifications of what you just decided on the manufacturing team and out to the customer? And so really trying to help people work better together, integrate everything together, but make it real life. It's really real life. And we have 8 programs in our defense and space team that are wanting to use this immediately this year. So it'll be fun to work on. It'll be a real proving ground. But I think it'll be great for the people too, to see how their role plays into it and how important they are to the future of the company and the future of the industry in going through this process and learning about it.
You made such a great point. I'm glad you added that, because many of the times I've asked friends, family members this question, even asked myself sometimes, what is the role that I play what is the value that I add? And most people can't answer that question. You ask the average person, an employee in a business, of what is your role, your why, your purpose, how do you add value? Like they can't really describe it clearly, and you wonder why they're not engaged, and you wonder why. Right? It's shocking actually, the amount of people.
I really like to have people, I like to kind of just, challenge them and say, do you see how your role is so important to the company? Do you see how it's important to your team, to your organization, and up to the company's strategy? So you could see that the nested layers of strategy and why your role is so important, not just to the company, but the future of the industry and what we're doing for the world. And at Intel and Microsoft and Boeing, you could see that. You could help make that happen for people, but they may not naturally see it. To your point, you want to challenge them and help them see that nested layer of strategy, where their role is so urgent and important for the future.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a big part of our role as managers and leaders to constantly connect that back and make that part of the workflow, the process, so it's embedded into their work and they can see it. It's just that random question. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but is that proprietary software that you've built to build that modeling, or is that kind of a company? I'm not saying you have to say the company, obviously. I'm just a massive nerd. I'm interested.
Yeah, it's a combination of things. We've been working on digitizing the engineering and manufacturing process for a while. One of our key partners, I don't mind saying because it's all public, is Dassault Systems out of Paris. They work with Airbus and also with Boeing, but they're really good about tools and processes, and we work with them on the training aspects of the new tools and processes. And then a lot of it is internal as well, the process flow, the design practices for engineering. So it's a combination of using some things from outside and then deciding, the Boeing approach to this methodology in combination.
How far do you think that we're away from, your team collaborating with a VR headset on, seeing the planes, walking around the planes, talking, you've got the modeling, the 3D modeling, which you're looking at on a desktop screen. How far do you think we're away from being in there?
I think we're really there. I think the technology exists to make it happen. And even, we've been looking at out on the production floor, how can people use AR, VR to work on planes and see it? Of course, they're physically assembling the planes, but AR, VR has its place out in manufacturing. For engineering, to your point, it's ready-made to be able to see, the plane and what you're engineering, and really work on it through AR, VR. So that's all part of this process flow that we're looking at, the simulation.
Yeah, you need to hit up your friends at Microsoft and get some headsets, some Vivas.
Oh yeah.
Like, come on, about that. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because you're right. Like the tech is already there. This is not a do we have the technology issue. This is more of a cultural shift, and it's another leap, right? That people they're going to take.
And that was why I was excited to go see how it could play out. I'd been at Microsoft for a number of years, was working with these consultants that were going out into customers. This was a chance to go really help make it happen. Let's go digitally transform a company that's been around over 100 years. Let's see it as a big experiment, see how it plays out. And, that changes people's lives and roles and the culture, but it also infuses a whole bunch of new technology and can really change a company. I noticed when I was at Microsoft, a lot of the customers were transforming one division at a time. They're like, ooh, we're digitizing this aspect. Maybe it's supply chain or engineering or IT. Boeing was one that was transforming a lot, almost everything all at once. And so that's why it was an interesting challenge to move into a company like that.
It's another interesting point because I asked you earlier, why did you join? And I feel like you also hit a huge part right there for people listening. Is many people that I know that work, and especially when you talk about working with Microsoft's clients, they miss being there for the delivery and seeing it come to life, right? So you do all the consulting work and everything, right? And then you're off, right, to the next client, and you don't get to see how it impacts people's lives, society, and that's the buzz, the energy that I've had your colleagues on the show that have described in the past, which is kind of what you just said. You was excited, right? You said the word. I was excited to go and bring that all to life and see it, the impact it would have.
Yeah, and that's where I think it's important for HR people to be able to see something through from beginning to end and really be a part of the team that's implementing it for the business, with the business as a partner. I think there's a certain adrenaline rush for sure in that, but it's also being able to really feel like you're having the most impact on the business that you can as a partner.
Yeah. Listen, before I let you go, I want to jump into our quick fire round.
Sure.
So you probably know what's coming if you've heard the show before. As I'm going to ask you some questions. You've got 30 seconds per question. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right.
Ready.
What are your hobbies and passions outside of the office?
Well, I love international travel, which of course has been curtailed a little bit.
Yeah. So
But
yeah.
so yeah, instead it's been getting out in nature also, boating, hiking, that kind of thing. I feel like so much is going on in the world. We just need to get out and get in touch with nature and regenerate.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to come see you one day. I'd love to go boating and hiking and all those things, man. Sounds so
Come
fun.
visit. The thing I love about London are the parks, maybe. So maybe that's the equivalent is
Yeah,
getting to one of the parks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Can't get a boat and just go boating though. You can't go for.
No, that's
Can't.
true.
You can maybe go canoeing, but you probably get told off in some of the royal parks as
Come to
well.
Seattle. Come to Seattle.
I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. If you could click your fingers and change one thing about HR, what would that be?
Ooh, yeah, I think it's the business acumen part. People really being in tune with the business strategy and aligning, energy and resources to serve the business, but take care of the people along the way. At the end of the day, it's about people and results.
Yeah.
And if we can take care of people and get results and have that business acumen, I think that's really important.
What? Sorry to add another question, but why do you think that's not changed? Because we've been saying this for like 15, like I've been doing this for 15 years, and that's still the same thing that people say they want to change about HR. Why do you feel we're still saying this? You don't hear any other function saying this.
Yeah, I think there's still parts of HR where you can be an HR professional and not have to interact with the business as much, and so they're just not as in tune with the business. I think the more we can rotate people and get people on the front line interacting with business leaders, the better. I know HR generalists do that all the time, but we need more people to have that experience so that they really understand how to serve the business, and they're not in some professional HR role kind of in the back office doing their role, and they don't really know how to make the connection out to to the front line in the business.
How would your family and friends describe what you do for a living?
Well, I think they would say I'm working to transform Boeing, the culture, the people, the strategy. That's how they know it, and how
is that how you describe it as well? When you're sitting at the table, you mentioned you have those dinners every day with your family.
It's not just about learning and development, even not just about HR. I think it really is a partner, working to see how we can transform the company for the future.
That's cool. Yeah. What legacy do you want to leave behind for your family?
Ooh, yeah. Well, for the family, I think it's, values and principles about life, some, deeper values about enjoying life, but also working hard, that kind of thing. I think on the business side, the legacy is, strong leadership and high performing teams and organizations, where we were able to do a lot of great work, have impact, and have fun along the way. For the family, it's probably more, having them see how you can balance work and life and get the most out of life. Enjoy it.
You want to work hard, but you also want to live the life to the fullest at the same time, which is not easy to do. I'm like the worst person at saying it ever. I'll like never take holidays. I'm the worst culprit of doing. I need to be better at that. What have you ever considered quitting before?
Well, quitting work or quitting
it's hard because you're a unique one, because I was about to say quitting HR, but you have in a way and gone to another part of the business. But I mean, have you ever considered leaving this area that I suppose that you specialize in, trying something completely different? Let's just put it that way then.
I think it's such a part of my life now, and having done the business part, I see how they all connect together. I do teaching. I teach at Stanford and at the University of Washington, some work at Columbia, but also do volunteer work at the United Nations. So I'd like to give back. And so I feel like that's kind of a well-rounded set of volunteerism, teaching, and then doing the work and connecting, business and HR. So I'm pretty comfortable in this space. I don't know if I'd completely leave it because I'm passionate about people and people development and high performing organizations to get results.
Yeah, when something like that's so aligned with your why and your purpose and interconnected that it's always going to be a part of your life.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I love it. What would you say is the biggest investment that you've made in yourself in your career?
Let's see. Well, I think, going out into the business was a big investment. I do think, continuously learning and staying focused on where the markets are going, the technologies are shifting. And so, it's a passion of mine, but I also feel like it's good for HR people to keep up on the markets and the companies and where the industries are going for the future. And then I do think giving back, I've gotten so much more out of giving back than I've given. And I do spend a lot of time, volunteering on off hours. So probably, staying up with the business and where it's headed and the technology and giving back are probably the biggest investments.
It's interesting how you can say, and for people that have done, they'll get it. Like you just said, that the question is, what's the biggest investment you've had made in yourself? And your answer to that is giving back.
Yeah.
Because you don't realize how much an investment that is by giving back to other people. It's not necessarily about taking something. It's about giving back. Yeah, if anything, sometimes giving back feels selfish because you get so much from it.
Yeah, I get really excited. It's that whole service leader mentality where you give back and you give of yourself and you can see that it's having impact on others. But then, in many ways that you couldn't see in advance, you're gaining and getting things back in return by giving.
100%. It's hard to explain, right?
It is.
It's almost selfish, but not at the same time as well. Last question: what's one piece of business advice what's one piece of advice would you give to the HR leaders of tomorrow?
Ooh, I think staying close to the leaders of the business and really seeing where they're headed. Understanding their strategy, empathizing with what they're experiencing, and coming alongside them as a partner to make a difference for them and their lives and their organizations and for the business. So I think it's that strong connection to the business leaders.
Love that. Well, look, thanks so much for coming on the show. I'm glad we made it happen. I'm genuinely really excited for you. One, because you're working for such a cool company, but two, you're clearly living your purpose and you're in the right place. So I feel like you're kind of the culmination of the last 30 years plus of your career has kind of led you to where you are now in this great position to help transform an organization that is going through significant transformation, but is going to impact the lives of millions of people. So,
well, thanks, Chris. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's really an honor to be on the show and be able to reconnect with you and get to talk through these questions.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Bye.
All right. Take care. Bye.